Hello, Scott.
How are you? Thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh, I'm so excited for this conversation. You have no idea how much I've been looking forward to our dialogue. I'm super stoked.
I am so proud of you, what you have accomplished in your time that you have this show, and it's just so good to be here with you and see what you're doing.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Scott. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your background for those that don't know you, and then I'm going to ask you to expand upon it. But I wanted to highlight the things that, as I've gotten to know you and just even reading over some of the ways that you present yourself to the world, just things that have stuck out to me about you. That is, A, you're one of the most interesting people I've met in the fact that you spent about 30 years in the FBI. And when I met you, your focus has been more and more around cyber, but as I got to know a little bit more about your background, you actually started in the domestic terrorism space and then really guided your way into the cyber piece. And it seems like it's become just a really, really strong passion of yours. So talk a little bit about that, how you started in the FBI and how you've now evolved to becoming the guy who knows about cybersecurity and really helping impact people's lives through that.
You know, if I had a time machine and I can go back in time 32 years ago and listen to this, I would have went, she's not talking about me. Because here it was, almost 32 years ago that I just graduated community college, grew up in New York City, raised by a single mom, didn't do very well in school. My mom was just struggling to put food on the table. And one of the things, I went to community college. I had a 2.27 grade point average. The world is not knocking down your door with opportunities. And my mom filled out an application for me to be a file clerk with the FBI. And September 6, 1988, I started as a file clerk making $12,038 a year. And it was part of what my mom jokes, and she says it's part, and she's still alive to this day. She's 85 years old. She's living in Brighton Beach. And she loves to tell everyone that it was her grand plan to keep me out of jail. And what a great way to do that by putting me into a law enforcement agency. And the strategic advantage I have against, younger people is when I was going to high school, we didn't have cameras and phones. So there's no evidence of what I've done. I became an agent in 1994 at 26 years old. And if you'd asked me to define the role of the FBI, of an FBI agent in 1994, 95, it was so different than what I would describe it today.
That's awesome. No, I love that. And yeah, you made a huge impact on me when we first connected because I've always had an interest in technology, but then the security piece as well. And when you sat here and said, hey, you can help people stay safe very inexpensively, if not free, I said, okay, teach me. I am a sponge. I want to learn this. And I'll never forget you were presenting for Women in Technology in Tennessee. I was serving on the board at the time. And you said just simple things like, hey, use a debit card instead of a credit card. And that next day, I made that change. And I'm sure it has spared me any kind of pain that a lot of these victims that you've talked to have had. Yeah, maybe I'm not an independently wealthy person that's like a big old target on my back, but still, somebody the other day used my credit card for DoorDash.
And yeah, sure.
They tried to order your credit card. Things. Yeah.
But when they would get in and they would steal your money, and it made people feel very, very helpless. And it did not make me feel good because here I am, I'm dealing with all these victimizations, and the community had this expectation. Scott from the FBI can't get my money back, and he can't put the bad guys in jail. And after dealing with that for years, it weighed on me. It really kind of got to me, and it kind of made me very frustrated.
So how did you see where the future could be? And I think you were really ahead of where things were going to understand it was going to be a big problem and understand how you could impact people.
Great question.
What was the foresight there? Yeah.
I get onto panels and people call me an expert, and I go like this. I'm not an expert. I just had the ability as a core competency to interact with victims. And as a result of interacting with victims, what did I do? I listened and I observed.
When it comes to having to go through cybersecurity training, it's either A, it's a rule and requirement and it's boring, or it's a fear factor. Target has a breach, Capital One has a breach, and now everybody's reacting out of fear, but it's still not personal. It's still not internalized. So I love your thought about that. And how do you go about making it personal for somebody if they have not experienced it? Is that good storytelling? How have you gone about that to impact your customer?
I've been going in and because I've dealt with 1,000 victims, and each victim was its own case study. And each victimization, you can do it. So if you can put the individual into the feeling of the victim and kind of make them feel really uncomfortable, and then explain to them that, look, if you do this, this, and this, you're going to be okay. But that's where it comes in, and there's a lot of differentiation, because if you do that, if you make it personal, people will pay attention and people will learn.
Okay, so Scott, now I want to talk about your book. I have it right here.
Look at the pretty colors. We'll show each other's books.
I like it. Yes, that's beautiful. So you gifted it to me, I want to say end of last year. And I was so thankful. I was excited for when it arrived to start diving in right away and saying, hey, what are some other things other than the few I'd caught from different snippets of your presentations that I can implement in my life to be more secure? And it's just full of it. And like you were mentioning earlier, you make it very personal. Talk about how it's impacted folks, first of all, in their personal lives, but then how it's been able to expand to the enterprise through your reach as well.
Well, my whole goal was to keep individuals safe. I didn't really write this book to keep enterprises safe, because I call it a simple plan to protect your family and your business, meaning the family first. But one of the things that's kind of happened organically, I had no idea that this was going to happen, that a lot of organizations were using the book as a vehicle for education within their organizations. Because one of the things that we can tell in the world of cybersecurity, if you can explain to people how to be safe at home, they're going to understand those concepts at work. And I talk about that so much through the book. But at the same time, we're talking about the really important issues that are impacting everyone in their daily lives.
And it's a brand damager, which right now in the world we live in, brand is everything. It's how people decide who they're going to do business with and who they're going to trust with their financials. And if you have that little tarnish that people take years to forget, it's going to definitely affect the overall profitability.
And I think the enterprises could get away with it a little better than the other companies, but let's talk about the small and medium-sized companies, the mid-markets here. People aren't going to be as forgiving for those. At the end of the day, Home Depot got breached. I'm still going to Home Depot. They're closer. I'm still going to Target. I don't care. But when it's that small and medium-sized company that gets impacted, that destroys it. And that's why I think it's so important that in this world, we have to understand those nuggets of wisdom that organizations, especially the CISOs, could use to help keep them safe.
I think that's good. And I love your message that, again, making it personal and everybody has responsibility is actually empowering for somebody who's part of a huge organization. And the fact that you have a responsibility and an opportunity to help the company stay secure and keep a great brand reputation.
And if you know how to do it at home, you'll do it. It'll be so easy. If you go like this, hey, we're PCI compliant, we need to do this, nobody cares.
Can we talk a little bit about these best practices, elements that are in your book of like using a debit card versus a credit card? I would love your perspective on things like facial recognition instead of multi-factor authentication. Tell us a little bit, like top 3 things that folks can be cognizant of to make sure that they're staying safe.
Here's what we need to remember. Email, #1 attack vector. You're going to get an email from somebody you know and somebody you trust. And you're going to get it. And I remember getting emails from companies here locally in Nashville with PDFs from CEOs and having to pick up the phone and going, look, the CEO never sends me an email because they didn't have the two-factor. So you're going to get an email from somebody you know and somebody you trust. And especially in this day and age in COVID, we're going to get an email. We're going to do things. I'm going to get an email from my son's school one day, and it's going to go like this: urgent. 17 kids have COVID who are on the football team. I'm going to get that email, and you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to click on the link. I'm really going to click on the link. But you know what? What's going to stop me? I'm going to click on the link, and it's going to come up with a Google Doc, and it's going to ask me for username and password. That's when I'm going to say, So we need to become a human firewall. We need to think before we click. We need to think before we act. And for those 2 chapters in my book, I tell people those 2 chapters are the only thing you should buy my book for. But I didn't write a book to make money to tell people that. So what I want to do is, for any of your listeners today, shoot me an email at, and we can put that in the notes, at Augenbaum@gmail.com, first initial and last name. I'm going to send you those 2 chapters. But you have to promise me you're going to read them, and you're going to talk to your kids, and you're going to talk to your parents. At the end of the day, those are the elements. Facial recognition, I swore I would never use it. Now it's the easiest thing in the world. And when I met you, what did I used to say about social media?
You hated it.
Yeah. And now I have a tribe. I have a tribe, but I have a responsibility. So all of your listeners, if you are not using two-factor authentication, you are hurting your tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the value nuggets. Those are the things that you really need to know. And then we dive into it a little bit deeper, like understanding the business email compromise. The question I get all the time is ransomware. Do we pay the ransom or do we not pay the ransom? What do you think about that? I'll turn it on you. What do you think? Do you pay the ransom? Do you not pay the ransom?
Oh, never.
Really?
I don't buy it. I'm not going to get myself in that situation.
Okay. So because I used to get that question all the time. And when I was up there talking at WIT, I used to go like this. Hi, I'm Scott with the FBI. I'm an FBI guy. I don't really have inflection in my voice. We never pay the ransom. But let me tell you why that fails. Because I would get phone calls all the time. I would ask companies, how much of your stuff is encrypted? And you know what they'd say to me? All of it. And I'd go, as long as you got a good backup, you're going to be okay. Then there'd be dead silence. What do you think that meant?
Meant that wasn't backed up.
Now, have organizations sat down and discussed that? Because we're all backing it up.
Yeah.
But we're not really focusing on the prevention. I sit down with organizations. I share to them what happens. What do you do when the FBI shows up at your door? I was involved with 40 different times that I had to tell a company they had a problem. And I sit here and I go, and nobody knows what to do. And I'm like, let's talk about why I came to you. This one little nugget of information that leads me to come up to an organization on looking at your outbound traffic. Do you have any visibility? And if organizations had a handle on that, I would not have had to show up. So what I do too on the enterprise side is sit down with these organizations. Do we pay? Do we not pay? What do we do? Does our intrusion response plan even talk about that? Things to me that were so second nature are things that organizations are struggling with today.
I think individuals too, back to your thoughts earlier about being a human firewall, I think a lot of people assume that the Gmail spam filter is going to catch it or the work spam filter is going to catch it. But there's really a skill training and a just understanding in your gut to say, oh, I probably shouldn't do this. But that takes being intentional about it. And I think being educated and learning that muscle.
Thinking about it too, because let me give you an example of where your spam filter is not going to work at all. So you get an email from somebody you know and somebody you trust who works at a corporation in Nashville. They don't have two-factor authentication. Your spam filter is never going to pick that up. And then what happens when they get into the accounts payable person at the organization and they read all the emails and then everybody goes like this, well, I got the greatest endpoint solution in the world. And the bad guy shoots an email back and says, hey, we made a mistake. I just need you to change the bank account and routing information, no malware at all. business email compromise. And I'll send to you, and I don't even remember, I may have sent it last night. The FBI came out with an alert on the business email compromise. It's the same alert from 5 years ago with new stories.
Wow.
That's what drives me crazy. We could really, if we're intentional and we think about this, we could solve these problems.
I think it's a good just thing for everybody to be cognizant of as they are communicating, whether it be personal or professionally. Train yourself to pause and say, wait, this feels off, before just charging forward, because there's been situations when I've just sat there and gone, something doesn't feel right. And instead of charging forward, I stopped, did a little bit more kind of research on the backstory, and very likely saved myself from a compromising situation. The interesting part is you never know you saved yourself from a compromising situation.
Never know. And it's hard to be on all the time. Like, I'll tell you how my wife succeeds at this and how I fail. My son, Aiden, who has a job at a fast food place, shoots me up. He goes, hey, Dad, where's my passport? I go, hey, what's up? He goes, oh, my boss, Alex, needs a copy of the passport. I need to take a picture of it. And I'm like, oh, okay, just go ask your mother. And then Maureen comes to me and she goes, Scott, what are you doing? I go, what do you mean? She goes, you don't even stop? She goes, Aiden wants to take a picture of his passport and send it via text message to his boss? And I'm like, oh my God, you're so right.
Wow.
You know, it's so hard. And I think I do this for a living, and I walk around and I feel about that small, because we can't always be on all the time. And that's where the challenge relays. So if people are sitting here and they're feeling frustrated and they're feeling scared, it's scary, it's frustrating. There's steps we could take, but it's just focusing on the basics and really beating it into your head on a regular basis. Yeah.
Taking it as a skill and exercising the muscle. I would absolutely agree. That's good. So Scott, you are definitely a man of passion, but I would say also of principle. So I wanted to ask you, what is a core principle that you have lived by to be successful throughout your career?
Couple of things. I would say open communication. I think that is the most important thing that you could have within your life. Is like, I even just having that. I mean, I've had some, it's so important to me. And as a core principle for myself, it's over delivering, being there. I mean, I am still friends with my bros from second grade. I am big into camaraderie. I am big into family. As a New Yorker, everybody's like a brother. You know, we have these things. And what do brothers and sisters do? We fight. My wife, who's from the South, just doesn't get it. She goes, why do you guys yell and scream and fight all the time? And I'm like, we're not fighting, we're communicating. We're telling people, and those are the things that I try to teach my kids. It's that honesty, it's that integrity, and it's also standing up and trying to do the right thing. But the thing that I want to be remembered for, because I got into a bad thing where I think I was addicted more to success at one point in my life instead of fulfillment. And now what do I want to do? I want to be fulfilled. And being fulfilled is putting my passion in front of my profit and, you know, trying to put together this program where I can teach people how to be safe at an affordable price. I don't even know what that looks like, but to be able to follow those principles, that is what I want to do. That's what I want to be remembered for. I want to be that guy who took what I've learned within the FBI to teach people how not to be the next victim.
It's awesome. Amazing platform. I've loved seeing what you've been investing and working on the past few years. Going to make sure everybody has access to your website and the content, and also your book. Take him up on his offer, folks. We'll share the information to be able to do that for sure. So.
And I'm also so proud of you. It is just, you know, one of the things that I've seen so many people do is settle, get stuck in mediocrity and to be able to not push through. But I'm just amazed at on the platform that you are building, on the relationships that you are having. And just when you pulled this off, I was like, wow, I'm so proud of you. And I say that, I mean, I really am. And anything that I can do to help you succeed, I mean, you are a person with integrity, and you are also a person with amazing tenacity.
I appreciate that. I'm learning from one of the best, so thank you for all your support.
Oh.
Scott, this was so fun. I really appreciated you taking the time and helping share your wisdom with my audience. I think you're going to help a lot of people through your mission, and anything I can do to support as well. I'm here to be your biggest fan and supporter, so thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and great platform. Keep up the unbelievable work, because you're the next generation of this. You're going to be taking over this for me when I'm done, okay?
Sounds good. I love it. Good deal.
All right. Keep up.
Thanks, Scott. See you soon.
See ya.
Bye.